Hey there, how you doing? Doing good? Fantastic. Welcome back to Makeup Myth Mondays. Woo! We are continuing with our theme of October spooky stuff, and we're gonna be talking about some witchcraft. Now, these three people, beings, mythological people, personas, whatever. These are not the only three that have some sort of witchcraft in their story or practice witchcraft whatsoever. They're probably the three most famous though, and I'm not gonna lie, at least one, if not two of them, is gonna get their own thing later on. They're just so fascinating, and there's books about them and stories about them that I haven't quite gotten to yet that I've read myself. Of course, I know with the research and the podcast I listen to, but I want to read them firsthand. Or listen to them, because let's be honest, Audible's a thing. So if this is something that interests you, we're going to do some makeup and talk about some witchcraft in Greek mythology. I am by no means the expert on this, so if you want that kind of thing, this is not the thing. I'm just going to tell you some stories and about these people. So if you guys could like, subscribe, share to the world, I would really appreciate it. Go ahead and check out my last video as well. And then I'll put this in the playlist. You can watch all of the videos that are on this playlist from my very first one. Hopefully I'm improving, even if it's just a little bit. So let's jump into this, shall we? So in Greek mythology, there's a lot of things in Greek mythology that's just kind of given up to the gods, right? So it's the gods did it, you know, they had the help of the gods, things along those lines. Now that's kind of true with witchcraft as well. They didn't just do everything on their own. Of course, they did worship gods and were priestesses and things along those lines. But for the most part, most of the magic can be explained with herbs, potions, and things like that. So we're going to jump into that. Now to start this off, we have to start with everyone's favorite blue goddess if you are reading Lore Olympus, and that is Hecate. You can also hear her name Hecate, Hecate. It depends on who you're reading, and they'll tell you how they want it pronounced. So I'm going to stick with Hecate because that's the name that I've heard the most often, and the podcast that I listen to usually pronounces it that way as well. So Hecate is the goddess of witchcraft, necromancy, the night, and then also of crossroads and entrances and things along those lines as well. Her parents were Perseus, I think that's how you say it. They're titans. So Perseus the Titan, and he's basically the Titan of destruction. And then you have the Titaness, and I'm going to try and say her name correct, Asteria, and she's of the night and stars, which really ties into Hecate and her being, you know, the goddess of sort of night and necromancy and all that jazz. All right, so now Hecate is usually depicted in one of two ways. She is either a woman holding torches, or basically as a three-headed figure. Now the two torches a lot of times has to do because she's in charge of basically, what's the word I'm looking for? Entrances and entrances, for lack of a better term. And then for the three heads, it's two things that I've read. The most popular one is because she is the goddess of crossroads, and so you have the three crossroads, and that's what that looks like there. The other one that I saw, which I thought was really interesting, is because of her connection with Persephone and Demeter, which we will get into in just a second. Now, the reason that I go over both of these kind of depictions of Hecate is because there's two basic kinds of people who worship her, for lack of a better term. Historians and archaeologists started to find depictions of Hecate along with Zeus and Hestia in households, and that's a lot of the times because she is the goddess of boundaries and entrances and things like that. So if you were to worship her and pay homage to her, then your house and your home would be blessed, because she basically is the one who controls whoever enters your home. Now, of course, the other way that she's worshipped is, of course, as a sorceress, right? So priestesses and things along those lines would worship her as the goddess of witchcraft. And honestly, from what I can tell, there's still people today who believe in witchcraft, practice witchcraft. I'm not saying that correctly, I know, because I'm not into that. So I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody, but who still pay homage to Hecate. I used all three terms, pick one, today. So you can still probably find some people who, I don't know if that's a Wiccan thing or a different kind of thing that I'm missing there. I didn't dive too much into it because, let's be honest, my search history is already crazy. I don't need that on there as well. So, but you can find people who still honor Hecate today. Okay. So Hecate kind of has this origins of witchcraft and witch tropes. Like, she kind of is the starter of all that in a few different ways. So she has animals that are always referred to as familiar. So very similar to witch lore that we all know and love, right? Not to mention the necromancy part. Like, who's not going to draw that conclusion, right? So some of her familiars, she's usually depicted with a dog, okay? Which I know is not necessarily what you expect from a witch, but that's something that is constantly brought up with her in that. Another one that she is constantly with is, it's called a polycat. And so the closest thing that I could kind of figure out about it is it's not really like an actual cat. It describes more like cat, whatever their genesis, whatever that is. The closest thing that kind of is in North America that we kind of look at is a ferret. So that's really fun, that I just picture Hecate running around with a ferret. I love that. I really wish a ferret would come around in Lore Olympus. That would just make my day. But anyway, so the dog thing really makes sense with her story and her relationship with Zeus and Persephone. So that's just a trope that she gets to carry around with her, again with the necromancy stuff as well. And one thing that they talk about with the necromancy is that she was usually followed by a spirit or a ghost, and she had the ability to kind of calm them down or have them move on. So Hecate really, she's best described as being someone who looks out for those who are lost. So, you know, ghosts are always going to be a part of that and are a really big part of her mythology. We are going to change this up a little bit because this yellow is not popping quite as much as I want to. So we're going to go in with a really goldish yellow, which I know normally in these I don't tell you what I'm doing, but I needed you guys to know that not everything always works out the way you want it to. And I really didn't want to have to put down a white base or do like a cut crease or anything. I really wanted this to flow better. And that looks so much better. Oh, say what you want about Kat Von D. I love the Saint Sinner palette. It does it, and it does it right. It's my favorite glittery yellow that I've got. And it's not like a glittery gold, it's like a literally shimmery yellow. Okay, so let's talk about Hecate's relationship with other gods, shall we? I think we shall. So she and Persephone and Demeter and Hades all have a pretty mixed up relationship. So it's nothing like the Lower Olympus relationship. In fact, most of those relationships are not very accurate, but they're a great story and I absolutely love it. So that's not me dissing them at all. That's her creative interpretation and it's wonderful. Anyways, but Hecate, because of who she is and her being able to calm ghosts and things like that, already has kind of a relationship with Hades, but she actually is said to have seen Persephone's kidnap and helps Demeter look for her daughter. And in fact, that's where the two torches come in. Helps Demeter look for her daughter, and we'll go into that story later, I promise. And then also with that three-head thing, right? You have got Persephone, Persephone, Hecate, and Demeter, kind of that threesome of women who are bonded together. Also, because Hecate could see the future and the present and the past, so also three heads. So many different attributes to that particular style. But after Persephone kind of succumbs to her fate with Hades, for lack of a better term, without giving away too much of it, Hecate actually becomes really good friends with Persephone and is a confidant and is one of the only gods that is allowed in and out of Hades and the netherworld, no questions asked. She's one of the only ones that Hades is like, you're good. Now, for most places that I've looked, they say that Hecate didn't really have any children. But as a segue into our next witch, a few places, and by a few I mean one, say that she did have a couple of kids, and the one that we're going to talk about is Circe. I had to turn the page on my notes, like, let's be honest. So Circe is one of the most famous witches out there. Most people know her from the Odyssey and her dealings with Odysseus. Now, Circe, I want to do a little bit more digging on, and I really want to read the book Circe, or rather listen. I think I mentioned that already. I love me some Audible. So I really want to listen to the book Circe, which I know is not like mythology, but everyone says it's so good. So I'm gonna take them up on that. I'm thinking. What do y'all think? Think I should do it? I think I should do it too. Now, Circe is said to have two kind of sets of parents. She's definitely a daughter of Helios, the god, and then either Hecate or the ocean nymph, I'm just gonna say it that way, Perse, I don't know how to say it. Anyways, so Circe is she's kind of portrayed as a very vengeful woman, a very free woman with her sexuality, and she's best known for turning anyone who wrongs her, her enemies, into animals. That's what she's known for. Again, her biggest one that she's known for is in the Odyssey, right? So Odysseus and his men stop at her island and she turns all of his men into pigs, except for Odysseus slips out of that. We'll get into that later. But they end up having a couple of kids because he stays on the island for about a year, but that's what she's known as. And every time I hear that story, has anyone seen Willow? Because seriously, every single time I hear about Circe, all I can think of is that witch in Willow who turns everybody into pigs. And I haven't seen that movie in forever, but that's all I can think about every time I think about Circe, every time. So anyway, so she ends up having a couple of kids with Odysseus, and then they end up leaving. So other times that Circe has kind of lost it when she was turned down is there is an Italian king by the name of, what is his name? Picus. Picus is the man's name. Picus? Picus? I think it's probably Picus, like, let's be honest. Listen, looking up how to pronounce people's names is not my strong suit. And I think everyone who knows me is like, that sounds about right. Anyway, so Picus does not love her. So she's not too happy about it, we'll say. Ooh, there we go. What does she do? She turns him into an animal. She turns him into a woodpecker. It's random. So random, right? Like, it's very random. So she turns him into a woodpecker. It's great. Brows are done. Isn't that exciting for everybody? So anyways, so the probably the most vengeful thing that Miss Cersei does is she is in love with a certain gentleman, and he does not love her back, but this certain gentleman is in love with the sea nymph Scylla. Now, this is just one of the origin stories of Scylla, of course, but to punish Scylla, she turns her into a hideous monster, which is of course fascinating because Odysseus has to get by Scylla to get to Cersei. You know, it's awesome. It's fantastic. One thing I wanted to mention before we move on to our third one is where I'm going to talk about Cersei's sister, Pasiphae. Pasiphae is going to have her own problems to deal with, and I really only saw this in one area, but I thought it was funny enough to mention, is that Pasiphae is not really known for being like a witch as much, but there is one time where I was reading and watching a YouTube video. Really, let's be honest, I was watching a YouTube video where they mentioned that Pasiphae, her husband, and we'll go into who he is at a later date, was unfaithful, and she was so mad that she cursed him, and that if he laid with any woman but her, the result of that union would have snakes and serpents and worms come out of his nether regions at the end. I mean, if that is not a great punishment for infidelity, I do not know what is. Like, seriously, I wish this was in more places because, that is great. That is flippin' great. I must be the only one that thinks so, but whew, Pasiphae. You got some messed up stuff that comes out your way, but let me tell you, that one, I love that. I love it so much. All right, who is ready for a very short, abridged synopsis of probably the most tragic character, woman, if not character, definitely the most tragic woman, with the exception of maybe Epidus, the most tragic of women, most tragic character in all of Greek mythology, and that is going to be Medea. I tell you, and I'm going to do I need to do an entire video, if not 2 videos, just on her life. Oh, now, some say it's brought on by her and it's her fault. Others will blame the gods, mostly Hera. I think blaming Hera is probably pretty solid, because who would choose this life, right? Not that she knew, right? Not trying to blame it all on Jason, but listen, he'd have been a better dude. We all could have saved a lot of suffering for this woman. So who is Medea? Medea is best known as Jason from Jason and the Argonauts, his wife, the foreigner as the Greeks would call her. A heathen barbarian is actually what they would have called anyone who's not from Greece. So yeah, she had a great go at it. So Medea is the daughter of the king of Colchis. I think I'm saying that properly. And he is the owner and protector, I guess, of the Golden Fleece, which Jason wants. So basically what happens is Jason comes and Medea falls madly in love. Now, by her own accord, did she have Tina Belcher syndrome? Who knows? Or as most people will probably say, Hera asked Aphrodite and Eros to make her fall in love with Jason, because Hera was definitely on Jason's side. Anyways, so she basically goes against her father, who doesn't really want Jason to have the Golden Fleece, and helps Jason. I don't want to give away too much of it, but she, through herbs and an ointment, helps him to be basically fire retardant against this dragon, tells him how to defeat certain warriors through kind of foresight, and basically saves him from everything that happens to him in Colchis. With that, anyways, she does some pretty messed up stuff. I'm not gonna lie. God love her. She does some very messed up stuff. You know what? We're gonna do some blue highlighter today. Not to give away too much of what she does, but you can't really see on camera, but it's really blue and it's pretty. So if you saw me in person today, yay, that's exciting. One of the things that I think is fascinating about her as well is she does leave with Jason, does some pretty messed up stuff to do that. I should probably do the Jason story relatively soon after saying all this, right? Okay. But when they get back, Jason's father is really old. And Jason asks for Medea's help, and basically through taking out his blood, infusing it with herbs and things like that, puts it back in to his body. He's young again. So she's definitely magical. She's probably the most intensely magical character in all of Greece, like the human who is the most magical. Circe is her aunt, which is very helpful in her story. I really am gonna have to do Jason's story, aren't I? I really am. All right, because we're doing witchcraft, we're gonna play with, I've used these in almost all of my videos as the Starlit Studio eyeliner. So I use the eyeliner, but I haven't really used the stamps on camera. So we're gonna do that real quick, shall we? So I always like to stamp it on my hand first. Ooh, messed up just a little bit. It's okay. It's okay. And then I'm gonna go in with some concealer to clean that up. And then just with the setting powder that's still left on my beauty blender, using that. And then I have the star as well. So we're gonna use the star as well. I'm very excited. I love these and I don't get to use them very often. Awesome. Woo! Oh, those look so cute. I'm very excited about it. Make sure I don't have any. And just set it a little bit, and then that translucent powder will soak in. All right, here is the finished look. My hair is down, a little bit crazy. It's fine. We're talking about witches. It's totally cool. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know we really skimmed over the top of some of these witches, especially Medea, but I really think that her and Circe deserve their own video, but I couldn't talk about witches without talking about them, especially Medea. She is so fascinating, so tragic, and just an overall just interesting character to look into. And you've got people who love her, people who hate her, people who think she's evil, people who think she's a person of circumstance. It's fascinating to look at her story. So I'm very excited. That's gotta mean that Jason's story is coming soon. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. There should be a video being recommended to you. Please go ahead and watch that. Like, subscribe, share to the world. And again, if you guys have any events coming up that you want me to do your makeup, please contact me. I am open for business. So yeah, and again, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Drive safe, make good choices. Bye guys.